Hey everyone, welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to be walking you through building a greeting card generator using React, styled components, and React Bootstrap. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to quickly bootstrap a new React application using create React app. We're going to call this greeting card generator. So I'm just going to let that run its course. I'm actually going to pause the video momentarily, let that run, and then I'll continue once it's done. Okay, so the run has completed. Now what I've done is I've split my pane into two separate halves, one for my coding editor and one for my browser. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code for this tutorial. And what I'm going to do is just some initial cleanup, but first I want to make sure I get my integrated terminal for Visual Studio Code. So I'm just going to bring that in here. And I think I'm also going to split my pane. And I'm going to do a yarn start to get that up and running in my browser. Just going to take a moment there. And then we're going to do a little bit of cleanup, and then we're going to install our dependencies. So I'm just going to wait for that to load in my browser before we do some cleanup. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to actually be getting rid of a few things. I want to go into my app.js and I want to get rid of this default header, and I'll just put some placeholder text. And I'm going to get rid of this logo SVG because we're not going to be making use of that. I'm going to go into my index.js and I'm going to get rid of the index CSS. And I'm actually going to group and get rid of that index CSS as well in my directory structure. And in the app CSS, I'm going to get rid of all these default styles. And I think that should take care of we don't need this logo import anymore because we have no logo to import. And I think that should take care of everything. So now we're starting from a bit of a cleaner slate. The next thing I want to do is install some dependencies. So I am going to install styled components, and I'm also going to be installing React Bootstrap. So let me just take you guys real quick to the React Bootstrap docs. We're going to be making use of the Bootstrap modal, so that's why we're going to be bringing in React Bootstrap. So we're just going to go to get started, and we're going to install our dependency. I'll just let that run. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. And there is another section down here where we need to import our CSS for the Bootstrap styles, so I'm going to just grab that as well. I'm going to go into my index.js and I'm going to import that. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to quickly go to styled components, and we're going to be using the styled components as a dev dependency. So I'm going to go to the documentation, and I believe we go to installation if I remember correctly, and I'm going to just grab the styled components and import that, or install that as a dev dependency. And just let that run its course before we continue. And the way you want to double check that your dev dependencies have successfully installed is to go to your package.json. We can see here on line 11 we've got React Bootstrap and Bootstrap on line 9 and styled components on line 14. So we are good to continue. Now, for those of you who are new to styled components, I definitely recommend you have a look at their documentation. It's great. We're going to be making use of styled components in this application to build out some styled components for styling our application. I'm going to be walking through how that works. We're also going to be making use of the Bootstrap modal. I'm going to show you guys where that lives. That is here under components. We're going to be making use of one of the basic modals to make use of our form. It's going to be contained within the modal, and when we click a button, that modal will appear and we'll be able to fill out our form. We'll submit the form, and based on our form inputs, we're going to generate a greeting card for our application. So let's go into our app. We're going to set up a components folder. So I'm just going to go new folder, components, and inside that components folder will be where all of our components live. So I'm going to just set up some additional folders that will represent the structure of this entire application. So we're going to have a card folder. We're going to also have a form folder. We're going to have a form modal folder. And I will also include an images folder, but this, I don't think I want this inside our component, so I'm going to leave that alone for now. After the form modal, the form, and the card, I believe that should be everything that we're going to be making use of in our application, if I remember correctly. I'm just going through my head, and yeah, that should be everything. So each of these components is going to have a component file, and it's also going to have a styles.js file. So let's go into our card, and this is just the initial setup of the project to make our lives a little easier down the line when we are building. So I'm going to add a new file to this card folder. It's going to be called card.js. I'm also going to add a styles.js file, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other two. So I'm going to do a form.js, and I'm also going to add a styles, oh, not a new folder, a styles.js file. I'm going to do the same thing inside my form modal. So we'll do styles.js and then form as well. Oops, form modal, yes, just like that, okay? So we've got our 3 component files ready to go. We're going to start by setting up our main root up here. So let's go into our app.js. That's going to be where our root of the application will live. All of our components will be rendered through that file. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this placeholder text. I'm actually going to say click to create your own greeting card. That's going to be the first title. And then the next thing I want to do is I actually want to start building out some functions. Those will all live inside of this component, but I also want to make use of the button component from React Bootstrap. So let's go and import that. We're going to import the button, and that's going to come from React Bootstrap. And then we're going to bring that button, and it's going to come directly underneath the main title that we've created in this app. So I'm just going to go button, and we're going to nest that with 2 tags here. You guys can see it displaying here. And then in between those button tags, we're going to say create your custom greeting card. Okay. The variant for this button, because in Bootstrap the button component accepts a variant prop, we're going to give this variant the variant of primary, and that will give us that blue background. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to go and create our card component. I'm actually trying to see if we want to do that first or if we want to create our form. I feel like creating our form modal and then our form might be easier. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. The form modal is going to use our Bootstrap modal. So we're going to import the modal from Bootstrap, and that's going to be from React Bootstrap. And we are going to set up our modal. So we're going to go const form modal. This will be a functional component, and we are going to return the following. We're going to say modal, and actually, to be honest, I think what I'd rather do is just copy and paste, because that makes our lives a whole lot easier. So let's go ahead. I think this is the modal variant that I want. Yeah, so I'm going to grab this. I'm going to grab the whole thing, this whole modal section. I'm going to place that inside of my code here. And we can definitely clean this up a little bit. Let's see. And that should look okay. That's our modal footer. Yeah, we're good. Okay. Now, if you guys notice in the Bootstrap documentation, we have access to some props that are accepted by our modal component. So let's go ahead and hook up those props. Some of them are actually already in here. The show prop, for example, will determine whether the modal is shown or not, and then the on hide will be a handler that will determine whether our modal is hiding. There are a couple of other props that we can add, and I'll just add those in, or they're actually not even in here. So I'll leave them out, that's fine. And we've got a close button in our modal as well. And we want to be able to trigger this modal by using the handle show handler. So let's bring in the props for this modal first. We're going to use destructuring syntax. We're going to bring in a prop called show, a handle close, and we're also going to make use of the children prop. This is actually going to replace the body of our modal. So instead of using the body that's provided by the default Bootstrap example, we're going to display our children prop instead. So let's go and we will grab, so in the modal body here, the modal body over here, we're going to display our children prop. So let me just remove this default text and I'll just put in children, and I'll show you guys will see what this children prop does. I feel like it's easier to show you than to explain it. Once we see it, then I'll add a little bit of explanation as well. Now, we're not going to use our buttons here. I don't think we need them, but I'll leave them here for now and remove them once we've got the rest of the modal looking the way we want it to. For this modal component, we're going to make use of the handlers for our state as well. So in order to do that, we're going to go into our app.js component, and at the top level, we're going to initialize some state. So let's go to the top of our component. We're going to also need to import our use state hook. I am assuming some familiarity with the use state hook. If you guys do need some additional clarification on that, I highly recommend the React documentation and of course other resources on the internet as you see fit. So we're going to bring in the use state hook from React, and then we are going to go into our functional component and we are going to start by setting up some of our states. So this will be for the show modal, and this is taken right out of the Bootstrap documentation, as you guys can see. We've got some initial state set up here. It depends on how you want to go about it. I'm going to be making use of show modal as my initial state and set show modal as my state update function, and that's going to be initialized to a value of false. The modal will not be shown on load. It will have to be triggered to be shown. So the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to also create some handlers. So it's going to be, the first one will be the handle show function, which will handle showing the modal. So we're going to go handle show, and we're just going to set show modal to be true when that function is triggered. And I don't know what that is. There we go. And the next function we will use for the modal will be the close function. So that's going to be a function called close modal. And that will go set show modal to false. So we've got a function for our handle show and our close modal. And then we can also include a function to handle the submit of our form, but I'm going to do that later once we build out our form component. So let's continue by passing down the appropriate props to our form modal, which we haven't actually rendered here. So what I'm going to do is go back to my form modal. I'm going to make sure that I've exported it. Export that form modal. Just want to make sure that I'm spelling everything correctly. Oh, there we go. And I'm going to grab this and import it into my main app.js at the top here. This is going to be in our components slash form modal. And we're going to render it down beneath our button. So we can go ahead and use our JSX and just render our form modal. And then the next thing we're going to do, the form modal will actually be a wrapping component or a higher order component. So what I'll do is I'll actually make this an opening and closing JSX tag instead. And our form will go in between these two tags. If you guys remember, we made use of the children prop in our form modal, which the children prop can represent any child component that's nested in between the higher order component in question. So in this case, we're making use of this form modal component. We're going to wrap whatever child component will be nested within it, and that will represent the children. So let's go back to our main app.js. We're going to pass in some props. We're going to pass in a show prop, and that's going to be equal to show. We're also going to pass in our handle close. That will be equal to the close modal function we defined earlier. And we're also going to pass in a handle submit. We haven't defined that yet, so we're going to define that as well. So handle submit. So those are going to be the three props that we pass into our form modal. Let's go ahead and define the handle submit function. Just while we're at it, I want to make sure that let's see, so we've got, oh, okay, so this initial state I'm passing down is actually going to be the show modal, not show, because I called it show modal. And that should be good for our form modal state. So the next thing that we can do is just create our handle submit function for our form. So this will be called handle submit. It will accept an event, and we will first prevent the default behavior of our form. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set show modal to be, we're going to set our show modal to be false when we submit the form, so that the modal disappears on submission of the form. We're also going to say set card details, and that will be our state variable. Now we actually don't have that set up yet, so let's let's go back to our tab to see our error, because obviously we have not set this up yet. So let's go ahead to the top of our application, and we're going to set another piece of state for our form, and that's going to be for the card details. So let's go ahead and do const, we'll do const card details, and we're going to set our card details. That's going to be use state. We're going to initialize that to an object with the following key value pairs. So let's go inside of there. We're going to have a holiday. That's going to be an empty string. We're going to have a sender name. That's going to be an empty string as well. Let me make sure I spell that right. And we're going to have a recipient name, which is going to be an empty string. We're going to have a custom message, and we are going to have a message which will be the default message in case there is no custom message. We're going to initialize this to happy holidays, and we're going to have a message type. This will be an empty string as well. And then lastly, we are going to have an image upload, which we will be including the capability for the user to upload their own custom background for this greeting card that they are generating. So that's our initial state. Now in our handle submit, we're going to be setting our details. The card details are going to be set up like this. We're going to spread out all the keys within our card details, and we're going to update the key value that is being changed at that moment. So it's going to be event.target.name will be set to the value of event.target.value. Okay, let's see, can't resolve components form modal. I think I made a little boo-boo. Let's just make sure that, okay, I see what I did up there. So what I should be doing is importing it from the form modal folder, not the form modal file inside of components. So I just missed a little thing there. Button is not defined inside of form modal, and I can see that the reason might be that we're not using the button component. And to be honest, I don't think we need this. So I'm going to get rid of these because we're not going to really use them. So we can leave that alone. Now, in our app.js, we're going to be adding some additional items here. The first thing is going to be going down to our button, and I'm going to copy this handle show because we're actually going to be using that function. I'm going to come down to this button here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up an on click. So I'm going to come out of my variant, and we're going to go on click, and we're going to place our handle show. This is the function that will trigger on click of this button. Now obviously there's nothing in here right now, but that's our modal so far. Alright, so that is, we've got our button working, our modal is triggering. I think the next thing we want to do now is start building out some other components within our application. So I think the next one, rightfully so, should be the form. That way we have something to display inside of our modal. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go into our form component right here, and we're going to create a functional component called form. And that is going to return our form component. This is going to be a very big component. I'm going to build out the form first, and then we will build out the styled components that will go with the form. So let's go ahead and return our elements. We're going to start off with a form, and we are going to, let's see, I think what I would like to do is create the form in its bare bones structure and then style the components accordingly. So the first thing is going to be a label. Inside of the label, I'm going to use the input. And essentially, the input will have all of the props. So firstly, we're going to say name, and the name will be set to sender name. That'll be the first prop, and then we're going to have this as a text field, and then we're going to have this as the value will be actually some state. So we're not going to place that value just yet, and then we're going to also have an onChange handler, which we're going to use later on. So I'm going to just leave those as empty strings for now. Just bring that down, and I will indent these. There we go. So that's our first form field. I'm going to call this form field the sender name for the label. And the next form field we're going to do will be for the recipient. So let me just copy this because it will look the same with a few changes. So this will be recipient name, and the name of this field will be recipient name. Recipient name, just like that. This will be a text field, and we will add our value and onChange later on. The next section of our form is going to be for the occasion. I'm going to place this inside of another div. So I'm just going to come out of the label and add additional divs. And inside of the div, I'm going to nest another div. We're going to be styling these once we get our styled components in there. So we're going to include a form header, and I think I'm going to make this an H3 for now. If I decide I want to change it, I'll update that. This is going to be what's the occasion. That's going to prompt the user for the occasion. And underneath this form header, we're going to use another div. And this div will have our labels for radio buttons to select an occasion. So we're going to use the label field. Inside of that will be another set of inputs, and we're going to add our props. So let's go down, we'll indent a little bit, and we're going to use the type, which will be radio, and we're going to use the next prop, which will be our name, and that's going to be holiday. holiday, yep. And then we are going to say the value of this field in particular is going to be for the birthday holiday. Then we're also going to have an onChange, which we're going to leave blank for now until we create that onChange handler. And then the label is going to be birthday. So I'm going to just place that up here. Or I'll place it down here actually. So let me just indent these out just a little bit because then you can see them better. But we've got to type name, value, and onChange, and then the label will be birthday. So now the next set of fields are going to pretty much look the same. So I'm going to copy this div block that holds onto the label and the input. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it a few times. So the next one is going to be for Christmas. So I'm going to change birthday to Christmas. And I'm going to change the value to Christmas as well. This is going to be in lowercase. And we're going to keep holiday as our name and then radio as our value, as our type, sorry. And then the next block will be for the next holiday. That's going to be for Mother's Day. Oops. Mother's Day. And we're going to set the value to be Mother's-Day. And we're going to keep the rest of it the same. And then, of course, you guessed, for the next block, we're going to do Father's Day. So I'm just going to replace Father's Day. That's going to be Father's-Day. Okay. So those are the next two holidays. And I believe I had a last one, which is going to be for thank you, like a thank you card. If you want to send someone a thank you for, thank you for being there for me. So we'll do thank you. And this will be thank you. I believe we can make this thank-you. And yeah, we'll keep the rest of that the same. So those are our radio buttons. Now, let me actually get this form rendering so we can see it in a modal. I'm going to export this so we can use it in another section of our application. I'm going to grab this and we'll go into, let's see, our modal. Or actually, no, we'll go into our app.js because we're rendering it there. So I'm going to go import our form modal from components, or import our form, sorry, from our components form/form. And we're going to render this in between our form modal tags. So let's go inside there and we will render our form. So now when I trigger my modal, you will see the starter form that we've got. So I'm going to leave that there, that way we can see the updates. Let's go into our form and we're going to add in a couple of extra elements to our form. So after we've added in all of our form labels, we are going to add the next elements, which will be our nested inside of divs. This will be, I think I'll make this H4s again, and we're going to say choose message, and we're going to have another field that will have some selections for a message that you can choose. So the first will be for, we're just going to set it up as inputs like this, and this is going to be a text field again, or rather like it will be a pre-selected message. So this will be a radio field. So we're just going to say type equals radio. If you would like the pre-selected message, you'll select that and it will display the default message we have stored in our state. So this will be, the value of this will be pre-selected, and we will call the name of this message type. And then we will have a checked value here. That will be an empty string for now. And we will have an onChange, which will also be an empty string for now. The label of this field will be pre-selected, so I'm just going to place that underneath my input. That will be the label for the field. And then the next section we're going to have will be for our custom message. So I'm actually going to copy and paste this above div block here. I'm going to paste that down here. And instead of pre-selected, I'm going to call it a custom message. And the message type, the name will still be message type. The value instead will be custom instead of pre-selected. And the option will be, the type will be a radio button. And we're also going to still have checked as part of our state variable. So I'm going to just leave that as an empty string. OnChange will also be an empty string because we're going to replace it with an onChange handler. All right, so we've got our options for the type of message that a user can select. The last field for now that we're going to have is going to be our text area to type in the custom message. So we're going to use the text area tag. And the text area tag will accept the following. We're going to have a type. This is going to be a text area type. We're also going to have a name. This is going to be determined by whether or not the previous radio buttons were selected to be custom message or pre-selected. So I'm actually going to leave that blank for now. And the next will be our value, which will also be determined using a ternary operator. So I'm going to leave that alone as well. And we're going to also have an onChange, which I'll leave blank until we have that onChange handler. So that's our custom text, our text area for the custom message. And we are going to leave that alone for now. I feel like maybe we could add a placeholder too. So I'll add a placeholder and see if that works. Let's see. Type your custom message here. Let's see if that ends up showing up. I don't know. Oh, there it is. Perfect. All right. Awesome. So that is our form so far. Now the last thing that we'll add for now, we're going to do the upload capability later, but the last thing that we're going to add is going to be our submit. That's going to go right below the closing, or right above the closing form tag. So we're just going to use a button for this for now, and then we'll use styled components to spruce that up. So I'm going to make this type submit, just like that. And now we should have a submit button. Now it can have a label. I believe we can add the label in between, so we'll just do that. And that should be okay there. All right, so that's our starting form. Now displaying inside of our modal, which is great. We have access to the close modal, and we can trigger our modal whenever we need it. The next thing I want to do is I want to start adding some styled components in here. So let's go into our form styles.js, and we're going to start creating some styled components. So for those of you who have never used styled components before, I personally find them to be very versatile within the context of JavaScript. Basically, we're taking CSS and we're using it in JavaScript, and that allows us to pass props around. We can do a lot of really cool things with styled components that we can't do with just plain old CSS, which I really, really appreciate. So we're going to start creating some styled components. The first thing we're going to do is import styled from styled components. We need to have access to this styled object because that's what will allow us to turn a regular old element into a styled component. So I'm going to start by creating a form label component to replace all of our regular old labels. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm going to export a constant called form label. This is our component. It's going to be set equal to the following: our styled object, which will grab the label and apply the following styles that we will be placing in the body of these backticks. Whatever styles we place here will just look like plain old CSS. So if you're familiar with CSS, this should be very easy for you. This transition should be very easy for you. And this component will hold all of these styles. So all we do is we wrap whatever we want to style in this component, and it will apply the styles inside the backticks to that element that we're trying to style. So let's go ahead and add some styles. We're going to say margin bottom is going to be 0.5 rem. We're going to go font size will be 1.2 rem. And font family, I have not set up Google Fonts yet, so I'm going to leave that out for now. We're going to add that in later. And let's go ahead and create a form input component. The styles for those, we're just going to have a margin. 0.5 rem on the top and bottom, 1 rem on the left and right. Next component will be our form headers. So those will be H4s. And we will style those to start with just some margin. So I'm just going to have margin of 1 rem on the top and bottom, 0 on the left and right. Oh, I forgot that. All right, and then next we will style our submit. That will be for the input for our submit button. So we're going to go styled, and that'll just be an input type. I made it as a button, but I'm going to switch it to be an input type instead. And we are going to style that with the following. It's going to be a number of different styles here. So border is going to be none. We're going to say padding is going to be the following: 0.5 rem, 0.5 rem on the top and bottom, and then 2 rem on the left and right. And then we're going to go border radius to give it a little bit of curvature around the corners. So border radius, we'll say 4 pixels, and then we're going to do background color. We're going to give it a background color of purple for now. We can update that to be some hex code later on. And then color for the text will be white. So, oh, I forgot it again. All right, so those are our starting styled components. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import those into the component where we're going to be making use of them. So let's grab our form label. Let's go into form. We're going to go to the top level, and we're going to import the following styled components. So we're going to go form label, and let's see, form input. Next one is going to be form header and submit. Let's go back in here and submit as well. So because we've got a list of components we're importing, I just like to make them vertically listed like this, just so you can easily read them, and bring the curly brace down. And then we're going to say from our styles like that. Okay. So now the next thing I want to do is swap all of the label elements with our form label component, and we're going to do the same for all of them. I've got a little extension that will match my opening and closing tags, so that makes it a lot easier for me there. You guys can start to see the styles take effect as I add everything in. And yeah, we're going to do this all the way through. This is just going to be a little bit of copy and paste. And I believe that should do it. Okay, great, beautiful. So let's go ahead and do our inputs now. We're going to grab our form input component. We're going to swap all these input elements. And those are all our inputs. Awesome. Next is going to be our form header. So it's going to be all our H4s. We're going to grab our or I think I made them H3s, but that's fine. We can make them H4s. I think I only have a couple on here. And that should do it. And then last but not least, our submit button, which I'm going to place down here. And to be honest, we don't need this label, because I believe if we make it a submit type, it will display a label for us. Just like that. Okay, so that's our form with all our styles now. Looks pretty decent for now, so I think we're good. Now what we can do next is start creating our card component. This one's going to be a really heavy component because it's going to be displaying a card type based on, or it's going to be rendering styles and a card based on the type that we select as our type. So if I select birthday, I will get a birthday card. If I select Christmas, I will get a Christmas card. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Since it's pretty hefty, I want us to get started on that right now. So let us go ahead. We're going to go into our card.js and we're going to start by creating a functional component. So this is going to be called card. And let's see here. We're going to return let's see, we'll return an empty div for now, or just a placeholder div. I think that'll be good. And inside of our app.js is where we want this rendered. So let's go ahead and export that. Just going to bring that into our app.js. That's going to go to the top level. We're going to import card from components /card/card. And we're going to be rendering that card. Just want to make sure that all this, okay, good. So we're going to be rendering that card directly underneath our button. So I'm going to place it down here, and we're going to pass props down. We are going to pass a card info prop, which will represent the card details. The card details are what we get as our user inputs. Once those are submitted, those card details will be rendered to our card as well. So I'm going to call this prop card info, and it will be our card details state variable that we're passing down to the card component. I'm going to grab this card info prop name. I'm going to go into my component and use destructuring syntax to pass it in as a parameter. That way we have access to it within our component. So now we're going to create our card template. What it's going to be is we're going to do it in the form of a function, which will be using the switch case syntax. So based on the card type, we're going to render a specific card. To be honest, rather than the card type, I should say the card holiday, because that's what it is in terms of our application. So let's set up a function called getCardTemplate. That's going to be an arrow function, and basically what we're going to do with this is we're going to set up a switch case scenario here. So we're going to switch based on the card.holiday. Okay, and this card holiday will get passed into our switch case statement. Our first case is going to be for Christmas. So we're going to say Christmas, and if it's Christmas, we're going to return the following. We're going to say, how do I want to do this? So we're going to have some styled components. We're going to have them we're going to use a series of regular JSX elements, and then we're going to transfer those into styled components. I'm going to do the first one, and then we'll do a lot of copy and paste and just switch out the values. I feel like that's the easier way to go. So let's start off by using a pair of divs, and inside we're going to nest another pair of divs. And in that div, we're going to have a main header, which we'll make it an H2 for now. If that changes, I'll update. And that's going to be the main header, and then our subheader will be like maybe an H4. And then we're going to have our greeting, which will be maybe a paragraph. I'm just kind of structuring this based on what I foresee as our greeting card. And we're also going to have our recipient displayed as a paragraph. And that should be the main elements of this greeting card. We're going to have a wrapping div, a containing div, or rather a containing div, a wrapping div, an H2 for the main header, an H4 for the subheader. Greeting will be contained in paragraph tags. And then we're going to have a recipient that will also be paragraph tags. Now this might change, but for now we can leave it as is. So next thing we can do is I'm going to grab some background images. I've saved background images on my side that I'm going to bring into this application. So I'm going to do that. If you guys want to use the exact same background images, I will be linking the repo in my description, so you guys can go to that link and copy those images from my GitHub repo, or you can of course search for your own images as well. So I'm going to include an images folder. This images folder is going to live inside my source, so let me just add that in. And I'm going to go into my saved images that I've got on my computer. I'm going to move those images in to my images folder, which is here, and I'll just paste those in there. So now I've got all those images ready to go. Now in React, we can set up images within a component by doing the following. So I'm going to go into my card component, and up top, let me just make sure I'm in there. Okay, yeah, there we go. So up top, I'm going to import the following. I'm going to import all my images. I'm going to import a Christmas. Oops. A Christmas image will be equal to, or import Christmas image from, and I'm going to grab the name of my Christmas image. I can't remember which one it is, so I'm going to have to look through all of them. This is the one. Okay, so I'm going to grab this image. I'm going to go into my card, and I'm going to set that up. This is going to be coming from my images folder, so I'm going to go ... because we're coming out of my images folder, and we're coming out of my images folder, and we're going to go into my components folder here. Let me just make sure I'm actually doing that correctly. Sorry. So we are not, sorry, I'm thinking backwards. So we're coming out of this card folder, we're coming out of this components, and we're going to go into my images folder. So that's how we're setting that up to be. I'm going to do the same thing for all the other images. We're going to go birthday img from, and I'm going to do the same. So I'm just going to set up all these images first. We're going to have a Father's Day img, and I'm going to import Mother's Day. img, let's Father's Day img. That's going to be from, and we're going to also import our thank you. And we're also going to import a paper looking background for all of our greeting cards to make it look a little more stylish for where the words will be displayed. So those are all our images. Now let's grab our birthday image. Let's go into our image folder, which I have up here, and I think it's up here. Just copy the relative path for that, and we are going to grab, oh, let's go inside of our card. So I'm just going to paste that, and then just do the relative. There we go. And Father's Day. Oh, this is our thank you image, so I'm going to just grab that. Might as well. Paste that here. I'm going to copy a relative path again. We're going to go into our card, and we're going to paste that one here. And we've got our Mother's Day and Father's Day left. So let's grab our Father's Day, paste that there. And then last but not least, we've got Mother's Day. I can't remember which one I made that. Oh, Mother's Day was actually, I swapped them by accident. This is our thank you. So I'm going to grab that one, and I'll swap that out. Let's see. So this is our thank you. I'm just going to paste that in here. And I'm going to grab this one and make it our Mother's Day, because that's the one that I intended to use for Mother's Day. Right here, and then this one's going to be used up here. Let me just remove those quotes. Okay, We have all of our images set up and ready to go, which is wonderful. Card is not defined. Okay, let me just see what happened here. So that's inside of our card component. Okay, there we go. So I actually have to pass a parameter called card into our function. And there we go. So we've got all of our background images now inside of our component available for use. So now what I want to do is start setting up our styled components. So let's go into our styles for our card. And we're going to start by setting up a, well, first we'll need to import our styled from styled components. And we're going to start by creating a component called greeting card. And that is going to be a styled div. Oops. And that div will have the following styles. We're going to have a background image. And we're going to set up props. And this is one of the cool things about styled components, is that we can actually pass props around within our styles to make our components more dynamic. So we're going to use the inline props function. It's going to accept props as its argument, and we're going to return the props.bg image. So what's going to happen is we're going to set a bg image prop on our greeting card component once we display that inside of our card component, and whatever that bg image component is set to as an image URL will be this background image URL. So that's how we can dynamically set our background image by making use of props within our styled component. Next thing we're going to do is add some padding. It's going to be 3 rem on the top and bottom, 1 rem on the left and right. Next will be width of, make it a width of 60%. And then we're going to have a margin of 0 auto. Background, oops. Background is, background size rather, is going to be cover. And then border radius, oops, border radius is going to be 10 pixels. So that's for our greeting card component. Next component we're going to build is going to be our message container. Oops. This will be a style div as well. And we are going to use this background image URL. We're going to do the same sort of structure as up here, but we're going to use a different prop. So I'm going to bring that down. And the background image URL is going to be set based on a prop called message.bg for the message component instead. And we're going to set this width to be 50%. We're also going to set up a margin that's going to be inline props. So I'm going to set up this function, and we are going to go props.margin. If there's a props.margin setting, then we're going to set our margin to be the props.margin setting. Otherwise, we're going to set it to be defaulted to 3 rem and auto instead. That'll be for our margin. And then padding is going to be 3 rem. And we're going to do a border here. So the border is going to be 3 pixels dashed. And we're going to set up the border color based on a prop as well. So we're going to say props, and we're going to set a props.color. That's going to be for our prop, for our border. Next styled component I want to build is going to be for the message content. Oops. Okay. Inside the body of this styled component, we're going to have the following styles. This will be a styled, the message content, sorry, will not be a div. It will actually be a p tag. And we're going to set up our styles to be as follows. Our width is going to take up 90% of the container. We're going to have an overflow wrap, overflow hyphen wrap, That's going to be set to break word. That way all of our text will wrap within the component. So break word. And we will have a margin of 1 rem. Margin of 1 rem on the top and bottom, and then auto on the left and right. And then our next component that we're going to add is going to be for our main header of the greeting card. So this main header will be a styled H6. I think I made it an H4 or an H2 or something, but we'll make it an H6. I think that might look a little nicer. I always forget the const keyword there. And inside the body of this style, we are going to add a font family. Actually, I haven't used Google Fonts yet, so let's leave that out for now. We'll just do font size. And this will be set up as props as well. So we're going to use the inline function again, function syntax. It's going to be props dot, if there's a props dot font size that is set, then we're going to set that to the props dot font size. Otherwise, we're going to just set that to a default font size of 2 rem. And that'll be for the font size. Next, we are going to set a subheader component. This subheader component is going to be a styled H1. And we are going to set up a font size for now, and then we'll add the font family later. So we're going to use the inline function syntax once again, and we're going to say props dot font size. So that's what we're just going to set up a font size based on our prop that we pass to the styled component. And then we're going to have a couple more styled components. This one's going to be greeting, so export const greeting, not export greeting. And that's going to be styled H5. In the body of those styles, we're going to say font family. I'm going to leave this blank for now. We'll add the font family in once we have those Google fonts. And then the last one we're going to have is going to be a recipient. This will be a styled paragraph as well. And we are going to grab some margin top styling for that. And we're going to have a font size. And we're going to have a font family at some point once we add in our Google Fonts. So these are all of our styled components. There are quite a number. So I'm going to be copying and pasting all of these into our card component. I'm going to do this above all of our background images. And we're just going to have them all listed up here. So let's just grab those real quick. Oh, I left out an A. Let me just grab that. Just want to make sure I got the other ones. Okay. And then recipient is our last one. And I think I left out a comma here. All right, so that should be good. Now, because we have such a long list, I do want to do this in vertical order so that it looks a little cleaner and easier to read. It's always good to do things like that instead. Bring that down, and this will all come from our styles. Okay, perfect. So now we've got all of our style components. I'm going to actually replace all of the elements that I used for the greeting card structure that we started off with. So I'm going to replace the opening divs. I'm going to grab the message container. I'm going to bring that down to the nested div. And I'm going to grab the message content. And I'm going to, I'm thinking here how I want to do this. Okay, I'll use a main header. And the main header will be for the H2. I think I accidentally, okay, so the main header will be for the H2. Subheader will be for the H4, I think that I had there. This becomes, I think, an H3 or some other H. And then we're going to have the greeting. And the greeting will come under the subheader. So I'm going to make that go here. And then the recipient is going to go at the very bottom. Oops. I'll just write that in there. So now we've got our initial structure for this greeting card. Let me just get rid of that. Oops. Oh, okay. I see why that is. Okay, that's fine. So we've got our initial structure for our greeting card. Now I'm going to start adding content and props. So for the greeting card component, we do have a BG image prop that will be set based on our image. So for now, I'm just going to place the Christmas image here as our BG image for the greeting card, the Christmas greeting card. The main header will have a header font. We haven't used Google Fonts yet, so I'm going to leave that alone. Same thing goes for the subheader. It does have a subheader, which will be a subheader font prop, and then we're also going to make use of our font size prop, and we're going to set the font size here to be 4 rem. So that will be accepted as the font size based on the prop because it has a value. Otherwise, if it didn't, it would just default to the default font that we set within our styled component. The next one is our greeting. That does not accept any props, nor does our recipient. So I'm going to leave those alone. And the body of our let's look at all of our text. So the main header is going to be the following. We're going to say wishing you a, and the subheader is going to be this message, Merry Christmas. And then the greeting is going to be a templated type of thing. So we're going to have hey, and then it's going to be the card.sender name. Or sorry, rather than, so the greeting will be hey, and then it will be the sender name. So we're going to say card.sender name. And to be honest, we can flip it around because I think I'm doing it in the wrong order. So we're going to say hey to the recipient name instead of sender name. So card.recipient name, and then the recipient, we're going to place as the sender name here. So my naming might be a little off, but at this point it's fine as long as we're displaying things properly. So between the recipient components, we are going to say that this is received from the card.sender name. Because what I want to do is kind of have like a dash, and then the person from whom the card was sent is going to go down here as their name. So from whoever. So we're going to leave that. I'm going to place a little space here. And that is the main content of our, of our recipient. Now for the greeting, we're going to have a card content component. Let me go between our greeting. Yeah, because I did create one. I think I'll just create that as message content. I'm going to place that component here. Like that. And okay, let me undo. I think I copied and pasted a little funny. So we can go like this, and then in between our message content tags, we can display our message. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if the card dot message type is equal to custom, then we're going to go card dot oh, card dot custom message is going to be what that content will display as. And I think I've displayed this in the wrong place. Oh my goodness. Let me just move that. Yeah, that's my fault there. So it should actually go in here. So card.message type, if that's equal to custom, then we're going to set this content to be the card.custom message. And let me just remove. Oh my goodness. Okay. I have made a little boo-boo here. So I'm just going to make sure that, yeah, this is wrong. Oh no, that actually looks fine. Okay. So I'm just missing some syntax at the end of this line. I don't think there's anything wrong with the way my tags are. Okay, so if the card.message type is equal to custom, we'll display the custom message. Otherwise, we will display the card.message, which is the default message. So that will take care of that. So we're setting the content of our message content tags to be whatever message we select. If we want a custom message, it will display a custom message. Otherwise, it will display a default pre-selected template message. So that's for our greeting content message. We have set up pretty much all the content for this first greeting card type. Now my screen is collapsed, so it's making things a little difficult to read at this point. I think I'm just going to make this full screen for now, and then we'll fix that later. So that way you guys can see it a lot better. So we've got our greeting card styled component, which will set the background image to the Christmas image. Then a message container that's got all of our message content in it. Our message content tags display the greeting card message based on whether or not a custom message has been selected. If it hasn't been, it will just default to the card.message. So that's for our first greeting card type. So now what I want to do is make sure that I'm exporting this. I am. So we can actually test this out. I'm going to, what I want to do is just have this sit on the side. And you know what? Let me, yeah, there we go. I'm going to bring up our React application. Okay, there we go. So let's just test out our form to see what we get. Okay, our form's actually not hooked up yet, which is totally normal. So I'm going to actually, we're going to work a bit more on our application to display our form. So let me bring that up here. Okay. So the next thing we want to do, I'm going to leave this as our first card template for now. This is good. I think we're ready for this to be used for something. So the next thing we want to do is we actually want to go into our form component and start taking care of the loose ends. So we're going to be passing down some props. Those props are going to be controlled by our main app. So we are going to set up some handlers. Let's go back into our app.js. So far what we have here is we've got a handle show, a close modal, and a handle submit. But we're also going to need a handler for our input change. So I'm going to place that up here. It's going to be const handle input change. That's going to accept an event. And we're going to go in the body of this function. We're going to use our set card details update state update function, and we're going to update the state of our card details. And that's going to update our event.target.name to have a value of the event.target.value. Now, just so you guys have some context on what this means, in our form component, let me just quickly split the pane to show you guys. So in the form component, each input field has a name prop and a value prop. The event object has a target key that basically refers to the event or the element that's receiving the event. So in this case, the elements that will receive the onChange event will be the input fields of our form. So the event.target, which is the input field, that's what's being targeted for the event that is happening. The event.target.name will be the key. So this sender name represents the key. And the value of that same event.target will be the value of our event target. So the name will be the key and the value will be the value. So the value here will be set by our state, which is why I left it as an empty string. The sender name, if you notice, we use the same naming as our state object because we want that to match. Basically what we're saying is we want the form input to be represented by the sender name key in our state object. Okay, so we're setting that value by updating our state, and that value will be set based on whatever input is received by this field from the user. So that's our handle input change handler function, and that will be for our form. So I'm going to pass that handle input change down to our form component. So I'm going to grab this function and we'll go down to our form component. We'll pass it as a prop. And I believe that is mainly where it's being used. So now let's go to our form component and we're going to pass this in as a prop by using the destructuring syntax. And there's a couple other props that I want to pass in as well. We're going to be passing in our handle submit. We're also going to pass in our card details. Oops. And our handle upload. But this we aren't using yet. And I'm going to define that function next actually. So I'm going to go back to our app.js component. Make sure that all of our props are being passed as we planned for them to. So handle submit is going to be equal to handle submit. And we're going to have a card details as well. It's going to be equal to card details. And then the next one will be our handle upload, which we haven't defined yet, but I'm just going to add it in because we're going to make use of it eventually. So let's add a handle upload. Okay, so now that we have all the props being passed down to our form component as we need them to be, we're going to define our handle upload function. So I'm going to go up to where our handle input changes, and I'm just going to define a function called handle upload. That's also going to accept an event. And oops, I did not do that properly. And in the body of this function, we are going to grab our set card details update state function, and we are going to update the state to be our card details. We're going to spread out the card details items within that object, and we're going to grab the image upload key, and we're going to use the URL object, and we're going to grab the create object URL function, and that will accept the file name or URL that we pass to it. So in this case, it's going to be the event.target.files. I'm going to put that at 0, and I'm going to show you guys what that looks like. So let me just do a console log of the event.target.files at 0, just so you guys can see where I'm grabbing this value from. So that is our handle upload function. We are passing it down to our form component, and we are receiving it in our form component up here as a prop. So that should be good to go. Now before we go back into our browser, I do want to complete the rest of this form with all the additional items that we need. So let's go through our form and hook up all of these props and handlers to make sure that our form actually works properly. So we're going to go, and our value is going to be the card details.sender name. So this will come from our state variable, card details.sender name. That's what will be set as our value. So whatever value gets received by our form input will set the state of our state object. In this case, sender name will be the state being updated here. The onChange handler is going to be our handle input change. So we're going to place that here. And we're going to do the same thing for the next one. It's the same deal. And it's going to be card details, except this time it's going to be card details dot recipient name. And the next section where we ask what the occasion is, we are going to also add a handle input change for the onChange. And I think everything else looks good there. It's going to be the same thing here. And it's going to be the same thing a few steps down because everything else has been completed. It's just the onChange handler that we need to add to our form. And that should be good for the rest of those fields. Now for the choose a message, we're going to use the handle input change handler as well. So I'm going to be adding that. And I'll do the same thing down here. And for the checked, what we want to do for the checked is we want to grab the card details state. So let's go and grab card details. And off of that card details, we are going to grab the message type. And we're going to evaluate the message type. If the message type is pre-selected, then that will set this checked value to true. Otherwise, if we select custom, that will set this checked value to false, which means it's not checked. We're going to do a similar thing down in the next radio button option. So this is going to be, instead of pre-selected, we're going to place custom here. So if the message type is custom, that will set this checked value to true. Otherwise, it will be false because this one will be selected, or neither of them will be selected. So that's for our custom and pre-selected fields. We're good there. Now let's move down to our text area. The text area is a bit more involved. So there are a couple things I want to do here. With the text area, I'm going to set the name, and I'm going to do a similar thing that I did with the above radio button fields, except the name is going to be set as follows. So we're going to go card details dot message type. We're going to say card details dot message type. We're going to set that. So if that is equal to custom, okay, so if the card details dot message type is equal to custom, then we are going to set the name of this text area field to be custom message. Otherwise, it will just be the default message, which will be message, okay? The value of this text area field will be set using our state variable once again, and we're going to say off the card details, we're going to grab the message type. The message type, if that is equal to custom, we're going to set this to card details dot custom message. Okay. Otherwise, if it's not a custom selection that's been selected, we're just going to give it the card details dot default message, which is just card details dot message. So I hope that makes sense, everyone. Let me just open this up here. So the name is going to be set based on whether or not this is a custom message. So if it is, we're going to set the name, which will be the key in our state, to custom message. Otherwise, we'll set it to message. The value will be set based on whether or not the custom select has been selected. If it has, we're going to select this value to be the state coming from our custom message. Otherwise, it's just our default message. The on change will be the same handle input change handler. And next, what I want to do is add our upload component. So what I'm actually going to do is set this up as a styled component. Let me just go here into my form styles here. And we're going to add an upload styled component just so that we can complete the styling of our form. So that upload is going to be very simple, nothing special. We're just going to do an export const upload, and that's going to be set equal to styled dot input. It's going to be an input type, and our styles for this will just be a margin of 1 on the top and bottom and 0 on the left and right, and yeah, that's it. So we're going to grab this upload component, we're going to place it inside of our form, and then we're going to come down to the bottom here. We are going to place our upload component inside of a pair of divs. So let's just add a pair of divs here, and we're going to add our upload component. The upload component will have the following types. It's going to be a type of file, and the name is going to be equal to image upload. This is coming off of our state object, by the way. The onChange handler will be the handle upload onChange handler. So I'm going to go handle upload. We already grabbed this as part of our props. So this will be handled by the handle upload handler because that deals slightly different with the image upload. The name will be our image upload key from our state variable, and the type will be a file type. Okay. So now that we've got that, the code here all seems to be ready to go for our form. I think we're good on that. So I'm going to actually collapse this back to a single pane, and we'll grab our, let's see, I want this to be displayed in 2 panes. So I'm going to bring that down and bring this, there we go. Okay, so now let's open up our form. And now you guys can see the upload option. So if I click choose file, it will give me the option to upload an image. And I can also fill out my form here. So let's try and fill this out just to make sure that we have, I'll use Christmas because that's the greeting card template that we've actually set up. And let's go for a pre-selected image for now. And I'm going to submit it. And we don't have anything just yet because we have to make sure that everything that we intend for this greeting card component is ready to go. There is something I noticed in here, this placeholder text, or the value text rather. I need to make sure that because I don't think I want that there. So let me just double check. Oh, because that's our default message. Okay, so actually there is another thing I wanted to do with this form. I want to conditionally render the text area based on whether a custom message option has been selected. Otherwise, it's just pre-selected. So if I select this, then it will give me my custom message. Pre-selected shouldn't even show this box at all. So let me go to the the text area section. And just above it, we're going to open up some curly braces. And if you're familiar with conditional rendering in React, this will be very familiar to you. We're just going to go card details dot message type. If that card details dot message type is custom, then we are going to use the double ands to render, not triple ands, double ands to render the text area. So let me grab this entire text area. Oops. I'm grab this entire text area, cut it out, and place it in here. And that will conditionally render based on the option that has been selected. So let's test that out real quick. So if you guys can see, the text area has disappeared. When I select custom message, then it will open up a text box for me, and then I can type in whatever I want. Okay. Awesome. So that looks good. If I select pre-selected, then the custom message will disappear and it will just give me my pre-selected message. I did notice there was a typo. I'm gonna just quickly fix that. Happy holidays. And just, there we go. All right, so that is the greeting card so far. Now let's go ahead and just make sure that our greeting card will actually render properly in our app. So let's see here. Okay. Got our card info. Okay, now I know why. So let's grab we need to call this card template function. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to return that here. So I think I'll just call it instead of nesting it inside of some divs. I feel like we should be good to do that. And we're going to pass into it. I think what I'll actually do, I will use divs. I think that's easy because I think it has to return some JSX elements. So I'm going to just do it like that. And I'm going to call it. And then I'm going to pass in the card info object that we are giving to it as a prop up here. That will determine where we can access this holiday key. So I'm going to come down here and pass that in as an argument. So now let's test out our form. Just going to put my name in here, Jonathan Smith, Christmas. Now you guys can see that the Christmas background is rendering. I'm going to give it a custom message. Merry Christmas to you and the family. And now we're going to submit that. Okay, so when we submit it, our greeting card seems to disappear. So we need to make sure that everything's working properly. Oh, I don't have a default condition here. So I'm going to add that in because every switch case does need a default. So let me just put that in default. I'll just render empty divs as our default if none of those conditions have been met. And that should do it. Yeah, we'll indent that. Okay, great. So let's just test this out one more time. Christmas again, and this will be a custom message. Merry Christmas to you and the family. Let's submit that. Okay, so our greeting card disappears yet again. I'm just wondering what else is going on. Okay, so I think I suspect where this issue is coming from, and it might be within my handle submit. So I'm going to go down to that handle submit. We are preventing default here. Let's see. I'm going to go back to my form. Okay, so we don't seem to have our submit handler triggering on our submit button. So let's go ahead and make sure that that is the case. Let's see, we're going to do this above at the top level of our form. And we're going to add an on submit handler. I think that is what we are missing here. So on submit is going to be our handle submit form handler. And that should handle the missing piece. So let's go ahead and test this out real quick. And there we go. Now, one thing we need to make sure is that all the pieces of our form are working. And right now, obviously, we can see some missing pieces. So I'm going to make sure that we've got all the background images displaying. I think there is something missing. The message container is supposed to have a background image, I believe. So let's add that in there. Message container has a background image passed in through a message BG prop. So let's go ahead and add that in. So the message container will have a message BG prop, and that's going to be set to paper BG, I believe it's called. And let's go ahead and give this a real test one more time. And I'll just use a pre-selected message. Okay, there we go. Now, this is not very responsive, obviously. It could be better. But for now, we're just going to keep it the way we have it. But as you guys can see, we've got our background image displaying, which looks great. And we've got our message sort of displaying. So let's fix up a few things to make sure that this actually looks the way it's supposed to. So I'm gonna just open that up a little bit, make it fully half. Okay, so let's just see what else we can fix up here. Let me try this again. So our recipient name doesn't seem to be rendering. So let's go ahead and just double check that everything is, oh, I see. Okay, so this is not, it should be sender with a lowercase s. Let's submit that again and see. Okay, so now Valerie Osei does end up rendering. So hey, Jonathan Smith, happy holidays from Valerie Osei. Let me just, yeah, so I am the sender. Okay, perfect. So that looks good to go. So now we can make sure that we add in our fonts, and then there's a little styling here that I want to do as well. So let's go ahead and quickly do that. So I'm going to go to my app.js, and my app.js, what I'm going to do is I'm going to center this H1 and the button. So let's just quickly do that. The button, I'm going to give it a class, and that class name is going to be main button. I'll just call it main button, and I'll call this class main header. There we go. Okay, so main button, main header. Let's just quickly style those in our app CSS. Text align. Oops, text align will be center. And then the main will be also, the main button will be, we can make it a margin 0 auto and see if that helps our situation. So let's just close this out. And that still seems to be sitting in the center. I mean, on the left. So let's see how else we can space this out. So I think what I'll do with this button is I'm going to nest it inside of a div. That way I can perhaps try and center it within that div. So just playing around here with some styling. I'm going to just indent that. Oh, see. Did not mean to do that. There we go. So I'll give this the class name instead. Let me just grab that class. Actually, I'll just grab the whole thing. And we'll place it here. And main btn, let's see, we'll go into our app CSS and main btn. I'm going to give that, I'm going to give that a display of flex. And there we go. So now we've been able to center our button. I'm going to give it also a little margin. So it'll be margin bottom. Let's give it a margin of like 2 rem. That way the card's not touching the header there. So now let's see if we can fill out our form. I just want to see what everything looks like before we move on. And there we go. Okay, good. So our form works, our modal works. We're displaying a greeting card based on the conditional background image, which is looking pretty good. Our button is also centered and our title is centered, so things are looking pretty good so far. Now I think the next step is we're going to add in the rest of our greeting card conditions. So I'm going to open this back up to full screen. That way we can really see what's going on. I feel like that's the easier way to go. So for the card component, we're going to add in our other cases. So let's add, I'm going to copy this. It's going to be a lot of copy and paste. Hopefully it'll be quick. So we're just going to grab this case for Christmas. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to come below. We're going to set up another case. This will be for birthday. And instead, this will be the birthday IMG. I think I'll call it birthday IMG to follow a very consistent pattern. So let's go ahead and make that birthday IMG. Wishing you a happy birthday instead of Merry Christmas. And then the rest of it's pretty generic for the most part. There might be a few style discrepancies, but that can always be fixed with a little bit of tweaking. After birthday, we've got Mother's Day. We're going to do Mother's Day, and we'll do Father's Day next. Father's Day, and then we will do the thank you message. I think it was thank-you if I remember correctly, so thank-you. And then this will be the thank you image. I think I just called it thank you if I remember properly. Let me just, okay, yeah, so it was just called thank you. So let me just get rid of the img part because that's not an image. And I will just say for the main header, I would like to thank you. And then we'll leave the rest of it the same. That looks pretty good. For the Father's Day, wishing you a happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. Maybe we could say something like, hey Dad. Hey Dad, wishing you a happy Father's Day. This will be a happy Mother's Day. And we'll just say something like, hey Mom, wishing you a happy Mother's Day. Oh, this will be the Mother's Day image, so I think I called it Mother's Day image if I remember. I hope I did, but probably not with a capital M, lowercase m. And Father's Day was also Father's Day image instead. And then birthday. We've already made our adjustments here. This looks good. Okay, awesome. So we've got all of our conditions now within our card component, pretty hefty. Now, I think the last thing I want to do here is start bringing in our fonts. So we can go to Google Fonts real quick. Let me just collapse this. I'm going to exit full screen, bring my React app out. We're going to go to Google Fonts real quick and bring in some fonts. And let's see, I'm going to browse a couple fonts. I already have fonts in mind that I planned to use, but I've picked two here, so I think I'll just add a third. I don't think we really need to go crazy here, so I think I'll just add a Corinthia. Was it Corinthia? Yeah, I think that's good. And then the other two can just be what they are. Okay, so let's do regular. We're going to add that in, and I'm going to bring in this link set of links. And we're going to go into our, oh, that's not what I meant to do. Let me exit full screen here. And I'm going to go to our greeting card. And let's set this up side by side. There we go. And yeah, so I'm going to bring in these fonts. I'm going to go into my public folder, into my HTML. I'm going to come down above these links. Yeah, we can go right here and paste these down as part of our Google Fonts. Now, there are other ways you can import fonts into your project, just keep in mind. I just find that Google Fonts seems to be the simplest way to do it, and it's pretty quick. So that's typically why I use them for projects like this. So next, we're going to go and into our card component, we're going to set up our fonts. So font 1, let's come down here. We're going to go const font 1 is going to be equal to the font style of Corinthia cursive. So I'm just going to copy this. Set that up here. Oh, I did not mean to do that. Okay, so what I'll use is backticks instead, since we've got quotes inside the body of the string. And let's see. Oh, I took away one of the quotes there. Okay, good. Now font 2 is going to be a similar setup. So let's see. I'll just use the Josephine. I used this for a previous project that I did, so I'll just grab the same one. And we can put that in there. And I need to get that other quote there. Okay, and then font 3, const font 3 is going to be this one, Open Sans, which I also use for another project. I'll just grab that, and there we are. So we got our 3 fonts ready to go. Now for our main header, we're going to be, for all of our components actually, we're going to pretty much use the same structure. So the main header is going to have a header font prop, and that's going to be set to font 1, or rather, sorry, font 3. And then our subheader will also have a subheader prop. The subheader is going to be set to font 1. Oops, font 1. So I'm going to just copy and paste all of these props. Let me actually full screen this so it's easier for everybody to see. So we're going to set up the main header. They will all have the same prop and it will have the same value. So, but you can definitely play around with this. Like if you want your fonts to be more dynamic, you can programmatically include that too. And that's the beauty of having access to props when it comes to styled components, is you have a lot more flexibility with how you want to dynamically set up your styling. So now with the subheader, let's go ahead and add that into our subheader component here. So I'm going to do that for all our subheaders. And let's go ahead and do the same here. And there we are. So that's going to be for all of our main headers and subheaders for our fonts. And now I'm going to split this pane again, and we're going to go into our styles and just make sure that we add in all our font families like we had planned. So font family for greeting, let's go ahead. The greeting, yeah, so the font family for greeting, oh my gosh, there we go. Font family for greeting is going to be one of these fonts. I'll just use Josephine. Actually, go. And font family for the recipient, I'll use Corinthia. So let's grab this one. And there were other ones that had font families. The subheader had a font family as well. So we're going to grab that. And that font family, we were going to set props for that. So let's go ahead and do that. Props will be the subheader. I believe it's the same. Oh, I used a different case. So let me just make that lowercase subheader. And that's going to be for our subheader, and we had a font family for our main header as well, so let's add that font family in there. We're going to say font family will be an inline function once again. We're going to go for props dot, oh, forgot my $sign. Okay, so props dot header font, and that will determine the font family of this main header, which, to be honest, we set up the same font for all of them, but you could make them different if you wanted to, just because it will be based on the value of the prop, so they don't have to be the same. And if we do want to make those changes, we are more than welcome to do that. So let's make sure that everything else is good. Let's see, we don't have any other places where I think we need to make use of a font family, so I think we're okay. So I'm going to come out of my full screen. I want to grab there we go. Actually, that is not what I was, there we go. That's what I was looking for. Okay, so now let me actually exit this. I would like, actually, you know what? We can keep this the way it is for now. I think that's better. Let me just minimize that. Okay, so I'm going to make this full screen. We're going to test out our application real quick just to see what it looks like, and maybe see if we want to make any changes. I'm going to select a different holiday this time, and I'm going to select a pre-selected message, and I'm going to go submit. Now, My background images are not rendering the way I want them to, nor is my message. So that's going to be some styling that we're going to have to do. Let's go ahead and see where we can make our changes. Something's definitely not happening the way we want it to. So let's have a look at that. So actually, let's split up our, we'll do both. That way we have access to. Okay, so I'm going to exit out of this double pane. That way we only have one. And in the styles, let's see. So I'm going to just double check where we can make some additional changes. The background size for our message container looks fine. The background size for our, oh, that's what I did wrong. Okay. All right, so there we go. Now we've got our balloons showing up beautifully. All right. Now our message container, the message, I think I want the text alignment to be centered. I feel like that's a little prettier. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I feel like now we're in business. Now you guys can really see that displaying there. So let's run through another test of our greeting card generator just to see what's going on. So I'm going to just put in my, now I'll do Mother's Day instead. Pre-selected message, submit. Wishing, hey mom, wishing you a happy Mother's Day. Hey Jonathan Smith, happy holidays. Okay, so this is a bit odd, obviously. So what I'll do instead is I'm going to update the message so that it's more realistic. So let's go back to the card, and instead of going hey mom and hey dad, we're just going to keep it at wishing you because we obviously want the name instead. Now, we can obviously set this up to be slightly different. Like, you know, we don't necessarily need to put the person's name. If we want to just say, hey mom, hey dad, we could do that too. So because we have all these different templates, we could just say, hey dad, right? And then we could set up, hey mom, instead of the name. Because obviously if you're sending it to your mom, I mean, there are different ways you could do this, obviously. Like there's so many options. So let's open that up, right? Wishing you a happy Mother's Day. Hey mom, happy holidays. Now, that's the default message, but let's say I would like to do a custom message. I love you so much. And then we'll just submit that. So wishing you a happy Mother's Day. Hey mom, I love you so much. Signed, Valerie Osei. I could send this to my mom right now. So that's just an example, but obviously guys, we do have the option of, you know, trying out a few other templates and just playing around a little bit. And the greeting cards all look wonderful. The fonts look great. If you want to upload your own background image, you can definitely do that. I've got some pictures here that I've used for other projects. I think I'll just use this American flag. Or since I'm from Canada, I'll use Canadian flag instead. And we will open that. And then we will submit. And we want our background image to actually refresh to reflect that new image. Let me try again and just make sure that it works. Otherwise, we'll have to double check what is going on. So we'll do a pre-selected message. We'll choose another file. We'll do the Canadian flag. And we will submit. It seems like our state is not updating. So I did say I was going to show you guys what the event.target.files looks like in our console. So let's just quickly have a look at that. So if I go into my console, I'm actually going to make sure I refresh this because that way I can really show you. So when I go into my console, oh, we haven't uploaded an image yet actually. So let me go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to quickly upload a generic image. Let me do that. And then I'll submit. And now when I go into my inspect, I should see an image there. Okay, so this is the file list. So this is what we get back from the event.target.files. And basically what we want to do is we want to take the first item. So we go event.target.files at 0. And we go event.target.files. And what we want to do is we want to set this URL as the background image. So that seems to have a name property. So I'm actually going to see if I can update our code to reflect this name property as part of our URL. So let's go ahead in our, oh, you know what we're missing? I realized that I actually didn't set it up in our conditional here. So what we need to do is on the BG image, we can't just set it as the image that we have as part of our selected images. We have to also provide a ternary operator to say that if card dot image upload exists, right? So if there's a card dot image upload available, then set it to card info. So in this case, well, we card dot image upload. Otherwise, set it to be the Christmas image. So off of the card, we're grabbing the image upload value if it exists. Otherwise, we're going to set it to be Christmas image, right? So I'm going to just do the same thing for all the other images. That way we have that flexibility with all of them. I'm just going to paste that here. And I'll do the same thing for Mother's Day. Oops. Let's keep going. Okay, perfect. So now let's give our greeting card generator another try. I'll do birthday, and I'm going to do the pre-selected message. I'm going to choose a file. I'm going to just use my Canadian flag image. And now let me submit. And you guys can see my wonky Canadian flag image there, but it's working now, which is what we know. So obviously these can be styled to suit the appropriate scenario, but just know that you do have the option of uploading your own custom image, or you can default to your selected image for whatever reason. So when you submit that, it won't refresh because we've already submitted one, but if I wanted to go ahead and try a different greeting card style, maybe let's do Mother's Day. We'll do a pre-selected image, and then I still have access to my default Mother's Day greeting card. Okay, so that's pretty much the project, guys. We've created a greeting card image, or sorry, a greeting card generator using React and styled components and React Bootstrap for the modal. If you guys want to add additional styling, definitely go ahead and do that. Try some things out. But for the most part, this is the basis of the app. If you guys have questions or comments, I would love to hear those in the comment section. I will be linking my GitHub repo in the description for this project. And I am very, very grateful for those of you who have stuck with me to the end of this tutorial. See you in the next tutorial. And if you guys have other ideas for me, or you want to see me do something else, feel free to let me know in the comments as well. Until next time, I'll see you later.